Hello and welcome to Bubbledome tutorial number 4 on using Unity. We are still in the process of learning Unity through making a very simple rugby style game. We're just going to move in this tutorial onto a little bit more on scripting and also importing objects from Blender. So we'll just get ourselves started. We've got our sphere here, our rugby ball, that already has the ball script associated with it. We were having a little trouble balancing which force to be using in order to get that ball to kick over the posts. Now I'm going to show you a really cool aspect of Unity and the scripting here. If I just go to the mono develop, and what I'm going to do in here is I'm just going to type in create a public variable, and the variable type is going to be of type float, which is just a floating point number, and the name of that variable is going to be force. Now I don't need to initialize it with anything at the moment, but we could, if we wanted to, just give it a number here and then it'll initialize it anyway. You could also initialize it inside the start if you wanted to do it somewhere else. Now when we save this, the cool part of Unity is that any public variable that you include as part of your class, it's global to this class, when you go to the object it's attached to and you see the ball script here, the variable that we created becomes part of the editor, so you can actually change it in editor. Now it wouldn't do much good right now because you've not used it in our code, so we've created a force variable here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace these numbers with the force variable. Now what that'll do is it'll whatever we type in, or whatever the editor, if we change it in editor, whatever the value is for this force, it will put it into here. We'll just save this and go back and I'll show you an example. So at the moment the force is initialized at 25. When I play the game you'll see, if I can find the ball, if I hit the space bar, it's a force of 25 and it shoots off in that direction. If I go to in editor, without having to even type the code in, if I change that to 15 and press enter, that will change the actual value, so the value that's used in the code. So you don't, if you're a good coder, you see there's a significantly less force added to that ball now. It hits the post and goes over. Now if you're a good coder, the way to write good code is to give the users of your game a little bit of freedom about how they can change these. If you're doing something that's quite difficult, you might want to put some public variables in so you can tweak it in editor without having to constantly go back and change numbers inside the code. That's one cool aspect of Unity coding. What we're going to do now is we're going to import some assets. Now your project, here's the name of mine, Unity Basics Tutorial. When you originally created the new project, you should have given it a location. It's a good idea to leave it, to put them all inside I know your own folder for Unity projects, but you don't necessarily have to. I always put mine inside one, so what you do when you do that is you can actually add and create folders for that. Now I've already put in a scripts folder, I'm now going to put in a models folder, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Blender and I'm going to create a very simple model, and I'm going to put it into that models folder, and Unity will automatically import it. I'm using Blender 2.5 and I don't intend to teach you how to use Blender, but we're just going to show you some of the similarities and the basics of making a model. So I'm going to delete this one with the delete key, and I'm going to go up to add mesh, and I'm going to add myself in a UV sphere, which is very similar to the sphere in Unity. Now I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the sphere in Unity. However, before I do that, I can change the number of segments that this will come up with. So I want to make it sort of fairly low polygon, so I'm just going to go 10 by dragging it. I can click on it and type in 10 if I wanted to, so I've got 10 by 10, and I'm just going to use the same widgets as we have in Unity, the transform, rotate and scale. They're down here in Blender. just going to pop this up so that it looks a little bit like a rugby ball. Now just for the look of it, I'll click on smooth. And before you export in Blender, any model you create in Blender, make sure that you apply the location, rotation and scale, so that it does actually apply to the whole mesh, rather than to the it won't be imported if you haven't applied it. Now the selected object here, to export it into Unity, just click File, Export, and we choose the Autodesk FBX format. So I'm going to choose that right now. I'm going to go into my documents. I put all of my Unity projects in the same folder, and mine was called Unity Basics Tutorial. Now you'll see an assets folder in there, and this is the models folder that I just created. You should see inside the models folder there's nothing in there right now. I'm just going to show you the export options that we can choose for the FBX. This is where it's going to go. So if I click on selected objects, I can leave this where it is. I'll rotate it once it comes in. I'm going to unselect everything. I'm just going to choose, make sure that the mesh is highlighted. The mesh is the only thing I want to export. You can obviously export armatures and lamps and cameras if you want the whole scenes. And I'm going to untick absolutely everything else. But basically I'm exporting selected object and only the mesh from that into the folder. Now I'm going to rename mine rugby ball, because that's what it is, and once we're ready you can click export FBX. I'll minimize, you can hop back between them, between Blender and Unity, and you should make changes and they'll come live as soon as you open up Unity again. The models folder now has an arrow next to it, and when it's exported the rugby ball, it's exported the rugby ball and any of the materials that I might have applied to it. The rugby ball right here has some import options inside the inspector. So in the project tab, just click on rugby ball, go to the inspector, and we'll see some of the FBX importer options. Scale factor is sometimes goes as 001, just make sure that it is actually 1. You can just type that in. I do want to generate some colliders because I want it to bump into stuff, and I do want to calculate the normals rather than tangents. Now, those are the 3 main ones that you change, and then when you've done that, make sure that you click apply so that any changes that you might want to make are applied. When that's done, it's as simple a job as dragging the object from the project folder into your scene, popping it up there, and that's basically it. There's my rugby ball. The other sphere I'm just going to delete. Let's get rid of that with the delete key. Now this, at the moment, we're going to make it a rigid body, and for a rigid body to work we need convex collider. So the convex tab here is, just tick on that and you'll see the green collision box that matches the mesh around the object, and add in obviously the physics component rigid body. Don't worry if it's losing prefabs, we'll talk about prefabs in the next tutorial. In this one now, the cool thing about Unity is we've written the script already, we know it works, we apply it to the same object and we're acting upon the rigid body component of this object, so we'll drag it straight onto rugby ball, and it will do exactly what the last one did. I think 15 is a good value, something like that, and by quickly save the scene and save the project, and then we'll go straight into running this program. Then I move up to that ball and I'll kick it, and this time you'll probably see it hits and rolls and bounces a lot more realistically because we're now using the convex collision mesh. It looks a lot more like a rugby ball. That's basically it. I've covered quite a lot in this tutorial. A little bit on scripting and adding some tweakable values to your scripts, and importing models from Blender. Obviously the better the model, the better your game will be, so spend some time learning Blender too. Good luck, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.